Hey, and welcome guys. This will be my first video for 2025. I finished up 2024 with a 3D print of a original design Mon Calamari light cruiser. Now in that video I showed you this 3D printed ship, the Liberty class light cruiser, Mon Calamari, Star Wars obviously, that I printed up and was just working on how I was going to paint my other ship. And I really like this design. This was a pre-file on Thingiverse, but it is a low poly type of a model. A lot of things on Thingiverse are not that detailed. It has the basic shape of the Liberty, but it's lacking a lot of detail. So I really like this and thought that I would, now that I kind of learned some things from my last print, I want to kind of take a little further and try some new things. So I'm going to be redoing this Liberty class. So you can see here I printed out the ship. Now the original file is a one-piece ship. It's about half this size. The file is, this was 200% print, which I had to split. I think I split it right here one time to kind of print it on the bamboo. And more of the reason is so I can print it in a way that I can use minimal supports, and I don't even think I used supports on this one when I split it that way and put it on the edge, much like you see back here. So anyway, I want to light this Liberty class like I did the other cruiser in my last video, and so obviously you can see here that I printed this out, and I just have several things I want to try. We'll start with the drive section. Obviously there was a lot of detail going on here. I printed this out. I did use a 10% infill. I think I did a 3-layer wall thickness on this to give it a little bit more strength. And you can see here, like the last video, I've gone ahead and cleaned out and drilled out the engine. So it was a little bit of work to get some of these smaller tubes opened up. It was hard to get tools, so what I actually ended up doing is getting this brass rod. You can see where it's kind of got some melted stuff on there, and I would heat it up with a lighter, and then I just carefully kind of used it to melt the plastic inside these smaller ones to open it up so I could get my LEDs inserted in there. The bigger ones, I was able to get some needle nose pliers in there and pull out that, but it's still strong. And now I have all the engines. It has quite a few engines. Doesn't look like it at first, but I believe it's 9 engines here. You have kind of 2 main ones, and then you got 2 a little bit smaller, and then you got 4, and this one actually looks like it's its own size. So it's kind of a odd layout on the engines, but I was able to test fit and get my LEDs all the way up into the openings that I drilled out, just using some 3 and 5 millimeter drill bits to kind of open those up. So I got that good to go. All my test fitted all the holes, and I was able to get those in there. I'm going to be using again these pre-wired LEDs. I have a 5 millimeter LED and a 3 millimeter LED. Now the 3 millimeter I'm going to use flickering, so these are solid. They stay on solid the whole time, and these flicker. This is this personal choice. So I'm going to have the 5 and the 4 big ones, the 5 millimeter and the 4 larger engines, so you'll have kind of a solid light going on, but then all these small ones it's going to be flickering a little bit. So that's what's going on with the back. I've started working a little bit on the processing here. You see where I've started sanding away. Like again, this is a low poly model, so it has quite a bit of work I'm going to have to do on that. And Thingiverse is great. I use it to print these things, and I'm really just building my skills on printing these things out. So the next step is I actually start purchasing some better files that I don't have to do all this processing on. But this has been great to learn, get that learning curve of filament printing down, working with it, how to slice it. And again, this one was sliced into 3 sections. I believe this was 300% the original model size. And so when you get it all together, I think it comes up to probably 17, 18 inches long. So it's a nice size. And on this one, I did something a little different than the last one. I actually printed it with no infill. The shape kind of lends itself because it's kind of pyramiding up, that it really didn't need support. I did keep these kind of top plates on it, top and bottom plates on it, to give it strength. And also, and you can tell I just took a Dremel and I've cut this out, and it still has a lot of strength to it, but I had no supports in it and no infill, so it was just kind of hollow. And there is a reason why I printed it in white. Just kind of watching the newest kits come out. They're coming out with kind of this translucent white. So what I'm going to be trying to do is, much like the new kits coming out in the translucent white color, is just putting a strong light source in here, some LED tapes. And then once I paint it up, I'll light block it from the outside. And then actually my plan is to drill in windows with a little drill bit. And since this is a translucent white, the light should carry and it should be able to light up the windows. It probably won't be as bright as like doing fiber optics or drilling holes all the way through, but I think it will get the job done. If it doesn't work, we can always cut all the way through. Again, there's plenty of room. My plan is to put a couple of light strips in here to illuminate this ship on the side so I can open up, and I'll do the same thing with the front part of this ship. And of course, there'll be some cleanup with that. Now, I do tend on doing a little bit, actually quite a bit more detail once I get the ship kind of sanded down and stuff. It's lacking, if you look at the studio model, it's lacking a lot of the little kind of humps. So this is one I had left over when I did my Zentradi flagship. And I'm going to be printing out a bunch of these in different sizes to kind of give more detail to our surface. As you can see here, I think it'll really help the ship out and give it a more closer look to what the studio model. But there's a lot of processing, a lot of sanding to go on, and we'll get the lights. So I want to get this kind of pre-painted back here. Since I'm going to have all these light bulbs, I don't want to try to mask that off. I need to, and the lights come all the way to the end, so I'll need to kind of light block around all the engine nozzles, and it does kind of shine through. So I'm going to be priming, painting this black, and I'm going to go ahead and put the base color on so I won't have to come back and try to mask off all our LEDs. It'll just kind of already be painted. So that's the plan, and we'll just see what happens with this, and hopefully it'll turn out. All right, I have my ship's interior lighting done, not so much on the drive section yet, I haven't done that. Just want to show you, I've also installed this aluminum rod for my support, for my mounting rod here. And as you can see in here, I have attached 2 of these light strips, 2 groups of 3, so there's 12 total. I think they're 5mm ultra bright LEDs, if I can get that into focus. About the support rod here, I first kind of used some baking soda and super glue to kind of glue it in there. As you can see, the little black part is just a washer fit over there to kind of give it a little bit more grip in there. But once I fastened that and got it into the right position with the baking soda and super glue, I did some 2-part epoxy and poured it in there, and it kind of fills up a lot of this round space in the bottom to kind of give it more support. So it feels really secure. I don't think it's going anywhere. It's fairly light, so it's not really supporting a lot of weight on there. But again, I'm going for this using the white filament, the PLA filament, to the translucent properties of it to kind of illuminate that. So it's going to show you, I'm going to dim the lights down a little bit here, and we'll just kind of plug it into this 12-volt power supply here. And as you can see, we get a pretty bright white, and I believe it'll be even brighter in there once we light block all this and the light doesn't escape anymore. But you can see around the body, I think it's going to be plenty bright. I'm very optimistic about just being able to kind of drill through the paint, through the light blocking paint, and into the plastic just a little bit, not all the way through, and that giving us some lit windows. So I think that's good. You can tell that it's really bright in there. It's a little bit brighter on camera than it is in person, but you kind of get the point. I've done the same thing with the front of the ship, except I'm just using, I think, the single strip of 6 SMDs will work. And see if I can kind of plug that in for you here. And you can see that 6 strip kind of illuminates that front end. So again, very optimistic about that. I'm not worried about the bottom. I'm not going to be drilling holes into that bottom section there. So pretty happy with that. So I can go ahead and start attaching the front end to the middle part of the ship here. Now, you may have noticed I've printed out some little kind of bumps and stuff. You can see a few of them. I went ahead and super glued them in place just to kind of give a little bit more detail. I plan on putting quite a few more. When I look at the studio model, it's just covered in these little bumps. So, but I wanted to see how they look. And for some reason, on this print, there's this circle on there that I'm not sure what that was for. Maybe it seems too forward to be a spot for any kind of stand to sit on. I really don't know. If anybody has any clue why that's there, I don't know. It doesn't look like it should be part of the ship. So however, I did kind of print out a kind of a half part circle there to kind of cover that up. So once I get these 2 sections glued, I'm going to be putting that on top to kind of cover that space up, and it will give a little bit more detail. You can see I printed out a stand. This is the one I used on my other light cruiser calamari ship. Now someone did point out on the video, my last video, that the emblem, the Rebel emblem, is upside down when you kind of display it like that. Really didn't think about it. Really, I was just trying to give some detail there. So I hope that doesn't bother you too much. Since I've already had one that fit this particular rod, I just went ahead and printed it out instead of trying to design a whole new one. We'll see. Maybe I'll get back on the computer and print something else out. But for now, I just wanted something to kind of hold my ship in place. So I'm going to seal these parts up. I still have to put the LEDs into the drive section, but I first need to prime and light block this section before I do all those. So, but it's looking good, and I'm very optimistic where this is going. All right, forgive the mess I have going on here. Just want to show you progress before I seal up my ship here. Here's the drive section. You can see all the LED lights coming out, and I've now, with a lot of finagling, a little bit of sanding, it really was helpful to have kind of a round file to kind of open up some of these, get these LEDs to fit in properly. That took a little bit of doing, but they now are all glued in position. I tested them all, and I just used some hot glue to kind of pour into the slots to secure them. Obviously, I'll condense all these wires down to just 2 wires and eliminate as much extra wire as I can. As you can tell, I primed it and did a black coat. So I'll kind of seal over the engine parts. That way I don't have to worry about getting too close to the actual LEDs when I go to add on the coat. Here you can see where I've now connected the front of the ship with the middle of the ship. And I've also used some Bondo glazing putty like this. And what I do is I put some in a jar, and then I put some acetone in another jar, and use a paintbrush to kind of thin it down, and then I just brush it on. You can see where it's filled in some of the layer lines, and of course there's a lot of sanding that's happened right there, and I let it dry, and then I do wet sanding. Otherwise it's going to just kind of foul up your sanding paper really quick. So really recommend doing wet sanding. Pretty smooth. There'll probably be more of this, another coat, or at least there'll be some filler primer sprayed on. But I need to go ahead and connect all my wires, run it down, and then connect this part of the back to the other parts of the ship. And then we can start working on addressing more of these little lines here. So I'm going to get that done. We'll come back when the ship is all one piece. All right, as you can see here, I now have my ship all put together. Kind of the same process of connecting it with just some super glue. I did go in, I had some gaps on the edge, and I think one of the sections lifted up a little bit as it was printing. I should have put a brim around it, but I didn't. But I went too hard. I actually used some of this old school Testors contour putty, which actually works pretty good. Filled in the major gaps around the side, a little bit of super glue here and there in different places, and then there's of course a lot of sanding and using my spot putty mixed in with the acetone again to kind of get rid of print lines and smoothing out the process. Now obviously you can see all the added detail I put in. I printed out a bunch of these kind of half shapes here, these circular shapes, all different sizes and lengths and stuff to give our ship a bit more detail. Try not to go overboard on it, but I think that's going to help the look of the ship and give it a little bit more sense of scale. If you look at the studio model, there's just tons of little ones. I'm not going to go overboard. This is a small model. That studio model is much larger. You can get away with putting that much detail on it. I do have a little bit more cleanup. I can see a little bit of super glue here. But from here, I'm going to put on some filler primer, and we're just going to start working on smoothing out the surface of the ship and get it ready for our base coat. So we'll come back once we get the primer all set on it. All right, as you can see here, I now have it in primer. I'm pretty happy with how everything's looking here. There are a few little blemishes here and there. You can see a little bit of seam line right here. I plan on kind of camouflaging that with some, when I get to the artificial paneling with weathering and stuff of that nature. But overall, pretty happy. You see with the added detail, all the extra kind of bumps and stuff that I put on. I don't know what you would call those, but everything's looking pretty good. And so from here, I did light test it. Everything's working. I am getting a lot of bleed through, so I'm going to have to put a black coat on top of this before I put our primary coat. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to put the black coat, and I'll be checking the lighting to make sure I don't have any light leaks, because I had a few light leaks coming out from under some of these bumps in there. I guess the light shining through, and it's kind of coming out through the edges. So I'm going to address all that with a black coat, and we'll come back when I get that on. All right, well, here you see I have on a flat black coat. This is for light blocking purposes. I did test my lighting. It's quite bright inside there, and even with this black coat, I was getting some bleed through in some of these areas, kind of underneath the little lumps that I put in here. And I just took some flat black paint with a paintbrush and kind of painted those in. You can kind of see where the paint is right there, where I was kind of getting those bleed through spots. So from here, I'm going to be putting on the base coat. So I'm going to spray that on, and we'll come back once that's applied. All right, as you can see here, I now have my base coat on, and it's actually a mix of a couple of things. Once I did my black light blocking coat, I did a bare lunar surface. I started to do that, and I ran out of paint. So I went to this, I just happened to have this stone gray by Rust-Oleum, and that was a bit too kind of a warmish gray color, a bit too gray, a bit too warm. So from there, once I covered that, I did load up my airbrush with some of this Vallejo ivory, and just did some airbrush. And you can probably tell I purposely did a little bit splotchy to give some color modulation going on without the ship. And then once that was all dry, I did a clear acrylic matte coat, just using this clear acrylic finish. I got this at Hobby Lobby, works very well to kind of protect the paint. And also the matte coat, as I move in, I'm going to start doing the pastel work to do the panel lines and the weathering, but the matte coat will help with the pastels, the chalks. It will grip them better than a gloss or satin coat. So I'm just going to start working on the pastel work. I showed that in my last video where I kind of use masking tape to create an edge, and then just take my pastels and brush it on, and remove the masking tape, and it'll give us a hard edge that kind of fades back. And I'll be fading it kind of in the direction that the ship travels, and then adding in some more colors as it goes. You might be able to tell I have painted the engines. This is Vallejo engine gray, same as I used on my other ship in my last video. And so just going to get busy on that, and we'll come back once I get some of that done. All right, as you can see here, I'm now applying dry pastels to do my panel lines. I've shown this many times before. I get these pastels at places like Hobby Lobby, any kind of craft store. I take a piece of sandpaper, attach it to a board, which I have right here, grind up a bunch of different colors. In this case, I'm using blacks and grays and some orange and reds for the kind of a rust effect. And what I'm doing right now, as you can see here, I have some dark lines going on. I have this piece of masking tape, and I'm going to take a little bit of my dry pastels, put it on a old paintbrush, and I'm just going to kind of darken it in. And the masking tape is going to give us that hard line that we see here. And I'll kind of freehand some of these grooves, some of these lower places I want to create kind of artificial shadows. And some of it I'll drag back further. Like there's stuff coming out from those panels, as you can see here, and then when you lift it up, you can see kind of the end result. So I'm going to be doing that, and what I usually do is I kind of go along with the blacks and grays. I'll put on a clear coat of matte to kind of lock that in place, and then I'll come back and start doing the oranges and different colors that I use. As you can see here on the bottom, I've already kind of did most of the bottom, and this is kind of my first pass of weathering and paneling of the ship. So I'm going to be doing the top here, but I wanted to show you the process if you haven't seen that before. All right, well, now I have my pastel work done, just using the orange and blacks and gray grounded up, and using my paintbrushes and the masking tape to create these kind of artificial panel lines to give it a sense of scale. And then a lot of freehanding, as you can see here with the colors. I use the clear coat, the matte clear coat, quite often in between applications to kind of do some build-ups and get some color variations going on in the different areas. Now the darker areas were done with a airbrush using Vallejo, just a matte black, thinned down about half and half with just water and thinned down, and I used that to kind of catch some of these areas in the front and back, kind of the beginning of a lot of the bigger humps around here around the engines, to give it that more weathered soot look, I guess you would say. So really happy with how it's looking right now. The weather, I think, really brings out the detail on the ship. So from here, there's really only one step. Of course, I'll have to put it on the display base. But from here, I'm going to be drilling in the little holes. Hopefully, my lighting will work. I think it will. The light's pretty bright in there, but I'm going to be drilling holes. I'm not trying to drill all the way through. I'm just trying to drill into the plastic, and hopefully that will illuminate because of the white PLA filament that we use. Hopefully the translucent properties of that will bring those windows and be enough to light it up and look good. So I'm going to get all that done. That'll probably take a while, and when I come back, we'll look at the finished model. All right, well, here's my finished Star Wars MC80 Liberty class Mon Calamari cruiser, or light cruiser. I'm really happy with how it turned out. Of course, the last step of it was just kind of drilling out holes, and I'm very happy with how all that turned out. I think it really worked well, having the white PLA filament, hollowing it out, putting those lights inside there. I'll show you in just a minute. It's not lit at the moment. I'll show you in just a minute. We'll also darken it down. There's a lot of light shining down on it at the moment. But very happy. That was a very easy process. The light actually carried, even though the strips were kind of in the middle, actually carried into kind of the wing section out here, and I was actually able to open up some of these lights right here. The only part I think I probably could have gone back, since I had all this engine stuff going on. I wasn't able to do any kind of window lighting on this section right here. I probably could have fitted some kind of light strip in there and at least illuminated this. So there's a kind of a bit of a stop in this back section of the light. Excuse me, my camera's falling down. Where the lights kind of stop because there's no longer available light illuminating the plastic. But I'm so happy with how it turned out. I did mount it on a base, as you can see here. I'm going to lift this up, and this is just a 8x8 wood frame. You can get these on Amazon. The plastic piece in the cylinder here is something I designed on Tinkercad to hold the model up. I include this hump to kind of give it extra strength and stability on the mounting pole. And of course mount that and paint it, and then this little chrome paint to hit the Star Wars and glue that on there. So I originally had a part like this where it was centered, and this was in the center of the ship. However, my mounting pole is kind of further in the back, so it made the ship kind of hang over to the right quite a bit and looked kind of weird. So I had to redesign it, and I moved the supporting part, as you can see, over to the left side of the frame, which gives the model a more balanced look on the frame. So pretty happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and light it up. I'm going to cut off some of the lights here because there is a lot of light shining down. See if I can, so you can see how that's illuminated through here. The curved surfaces did make it a little bit difficult to keep my line straight. I know there's some parts on this, they got a little bit off, they're just not straight. They look kind of slant down a little bit. Now I did use some of these drill bits, and I used two different sizes. This is the smaller one. I started off with a bigger size. We'll see if we can get a closer look in there. A bigger size initially to get some of the windows, and then I kind of went to the smaller size. Probably should have did the smaller size just for a sense of scale, but overall I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. So you can see how that's lit up all the way up into the front end. Some areas I just try to follow contours or follow panel lines to try to keep it straight. You can see some of the lighting, probably a little bit better there. I have a light shining directly on it, so it's making it a little bit harder to see. Now this is running off a 12-volt LED power supply. It does work with like a 9-volt if you wanted to go that route. And of course, we'll take a look at the engines here. I'm going to lower my camera down a little bit so you can get a better look at that. And then you can see the engines. So very happy with how all the engines came out. Of course, the 4 bigger ones are 5mm constant on, and then we have 6 3mm flickering lights going on to give it a little bit of variance. I really like the bigger ones, how they kind of look different than the other ones. Obviously, you would think it's maybe a different type of engine or something along those lines. Just give it a little bit of variance in how it looks. And again, here's a shot of the windows all illuminated. So just to kind of show you the before and after again. And give you a better look. So that's my completed MC80. Now I am moving on. My next project is probably going to be Home 1. I've already printed out. I'm not going to show that on this video, but I'm taking the lessons learned from the last 2 Mon Calamari ships and applying it to the Home 1. I think I've learned a lot on this one. I really like using the white PLA. I think that made lighting so much easier than to try to run fiber optics or things of that nature. And I think it gave a really nice effect, though I did learn some lessons on that. But anyway, thanks for watching. Until next time, everybody have a good one.